The twin suns of Kepler, 442b, cast long shadows across the crystalline peaks of Mount Thyros as 12-year-old Marcus Chun adjusted his thermal scanner for the third time that morning. The device, a hand-me-down from his xenobiologist mother, had been acting up since they arrived at the research station 2 weeks ago. Snow crunched beneath his insulated boots as he made his way along the predetermined survey route, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air despite his environmental suit's heating system. Marcus had volunteered for the specimen collection duty partly to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the research dome, where 14 adult scientists from 6 different species debated endlessly about atmospheric composition and geological formations. Being the only human child on an alien world had its challenges, especially when that world was experiencing an unexpected climate shift that had the entire scientific community baffled. The planet's normally temperate zones had been plunging into sub-zero temperatures for the past month, causing massive disruptions to local ecosystems. Native species were migrating in patterns never before recorded, and several had already been declared locally extinct. The situation was so severe that the Galactic Science Council had dispatched emergency teams from across the sector, including Marcus's mother's xenobiology unit from Earth. As Marcus crested a small ridge, his scanner began emitting a series of rapid beeps. The readings were unlike anything he had seen before, massive thermal signatures consistent with reptilian life, but the temperature readings were all wrong. According to his device, whatever was out there should have been dead hours ago in these conditions. He followed the signal down into a narrow valley carved between 2 glacier-touched peaks. The wind picked up, howling through the rock formations and creating an eerie symphony that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. His mother had warned him about staying too close to the thermal vents in this region, but the readings were leading him directly toward what appeared to be a dormant volcanic fissure. The scanner's beeping became urgent as Marcus approached a cluster of obsidian boulders arranged in an almost perfect circle. Steam rose from cracks in the ground, suggesting geothermal activity beneath the surface. It was then that he heard it, a sound so weak and pitiful that he almost dismissed it as wind whistling through the rocks. But there was again a whimper distinctly biological in nature, coming from somewhere among the boulders. Marcus activated his suit's external microphones and triangulated the source of the sound. Following the audio signature, he discovered a narrow cave entrance partially concealed by fallen rocks and ice formations. The thermal readings spiked as he approached, and he realized that whatever was inside was generating significant body heat despite the freezing conditions. Peering into the cave with his helmet's enhanced lighting system, Marcus gasped at what he saw. Curled in the deepest recess of the small cavern was a creature that defied everything he thought he knew about the planet's native fauna. It was roughly the size of a house cat, but its body was covered in scales that shifted color from deep emerald to silvery blue, depending on the angle of the light. 2 tiny wings, translucent and membrane-like, were folded tightly against its back, and a long, serpentine tail wrapped around its body in what was clearly a defensive posture. But what truly captured Marcus's attention were its eyes. Large, multifaceted orbs that reflected intelligence and unmistakable fear. The creature was clearly young, a hatchling of some kind, and it was shivering violently despite being positioned directly over one of the thermal vents. Marcus's xenobiology training, learned through countless hours listening to his mother's work discussions, kicked in immediately. This was clearly a previously undiscovered species, one that appeared to be suffering from severe hypothermia despite its proximity to a heat source. The planet's climate shift must have caught this little one away from its proper habitat. The creature noticed Marcus's presence and let out another weak cry, this one accompanied by what could only be described as a pleading gesture. It extended one tiny clawed appendage toward him while keeping its body pressed as close to the thermal vent as possible. Marcus checked his suit's external temperature gauge, negative 43 degrees Celsius and falling. Even with the geothermal heat, this cave was barely above freezing. for a young reptilian creature, especially one that appeared to be built for much warmer climates. These conditions were lethal. His mother's voice echoed in his memory from their countless discussions about first contact protocols. Never interfere with native species. Always maintain observational distance. Document everything, but avoid direct interaction. The Galactic Science Council had strict guidelines about preserving the natural development of newly discovered life forms. But as Marcus watched the small creature struggle against the cold, its breathing becoming more labored with each passing minute, all of those protocols seemed suddenly meaningless. This wasn't about scientific observation anymore. This was about a living being in desperate need of help. The creature made another sound, softer this time, almost musical in its tone, its large eyes fixed on Marcus with what he could only interpret as hope. In that moment, something fundamental shifted in the boy's understanding of his place in the universe. Here was an intelligent being reaching across species barriers, asking for help in the most basic way possible. Marcus activated his suit's recording function, knowing that whatever happened next would need to be documented. He began speaking in a low, calm voice, both to create an audio record and to potentially comfort the frightened creature. "Hey there, little one. I'm Marcus. I can see you're scared and cold. I want to help you, but I need you to trust me, okay?" The creature's head tilted slightly at the sound of his voice, suggesting some level of auditory comprehension. Its shivering intensified, and Marcus realized that time was running out. Hypothermia in reptilian species could progress rapidly, leading to organ failure within hours. He made a decision that would later be debated in academic circles across the galaxy. Marcus began removing his outer thermal layer, creating a makeshift warming pouch. The creature watched his movements with intense curiosity, its fear gradually being replaced by what appeared to be cautious optimism. As Marcus slowly extended the thermal blanket toward the cave entrance, the creature made a decision of its own. With movements that were surprisingly graceful despite its weakened state, it crawled forward and allowed itself to be gently wrapped in the human-made warmth. The moment Marcus lifted the small being, several things happened simultaneously. His suit's biomedical sensors detected massive electromagnetic activity from the creature, suggesting highly developed neural pathways. The creature itself began emitting a low, rhythmic humming sound that seemed to resonate with Marcus's own biorhythm. And, most remarkably, the boy felt a strange tingling sensation in his mind, as if something was gently probing the edges of his consciousness. The creature's eyes locked onto his, and, for just a moment, Marcus could have sworn he sensed gratitude emanating from those alien orbs. Not just the gratitude of a rescued animal, but something deeper, more complex. Something that suggested this small being understood exactly what Marcus was risking by helping it. As he began the trek back toward the research station, Marcus found himself talking continuously to his unexpected companion. The creature seemed to respond to his voice, its humming growing stronger when he spoke in gentle tones, and becoming more subdued when he paused. "I don't know what you are exactly," Marcus said as they navigated through a particularly treacherous section of ice-covered rocks. "But I know you don't belong out here in this cold. Something tells me you're supposed to be somewhere much warmer, aren't you?" The creature's response was a series of musical chirps that sounded almost conversational. Marcus laughed despite the seriousness of their situation. "I wish I could understand what you're trying to tell me. My mom would probably know how to communicate with you properly. She's studied hundreds of different species, but I bet she's never seen anything like you before." As they approached the research dome, Marcus began to fully comprehend the magnitude of what he was about to do. Bringing an unidentified alien creature into a controlled scientific environment went against every protocol he had ever been taught. The potential for biological contamination alone could result in a complete evacuation of the facility. But looking down at the small being nestled in his thermal wrap, now breathing more easily thanks to his suit's heated lining, Marcus knew he had made the only choice his conscience would allow. This wasn't about science or protocols or career implications. This was about recognizing a fellow sentient being in distress and responding with compassion. The creature seemed to sense his internal conflict. It raised its small head and fixed those remarkable eyes on his face once again. This time, Marcus was certain he felt something brush against his thoughts. Not an invasion, but a gentle inquiry. The sensation was warm and oddly comforting, carrying with it an unmistakable message of trust and gratitude. As they reached the outer perimeter of the research station, Marcus activated his communication system to contact his mother. Whatever happened next, he knew his life had been permanently changed by this encounter. He had crossed a line that separated observer from participant, scientist from humanitarian. The dome's airlock loomed before them, representing the boundary between the harsh alien wilderness and the controlled environment of human science. In a few minutes, Marcus would have to explain his actions to some of the galaxy's most respected xenobiologists. He would have to defend his decision to ignore decades of established protocol in favor of simple compassion. But as the creature in his arms hummed softly and pressed closer to his warmth, Marcus realized he wouldn't change a thing. Sometimes, being human meant trusting your heart over your head, even when the consequences were impossible to predict. The boy and his mysterious companion stood at the threshold of an adventure that would challenge everything the scientific community thought they knew about intelligence, communication, and the bonds that could form between species separated by millions of years of evolution. Marcus took a deep breath of the filtered station air and prepared to face whatever came next. Behind him, the alien wilderness stretched endlessly under the twin suns, holding countless secrets yet to be discovered. But in his arms, one of those secrets had already chosen to trust in the unique capacity for compassion that made humanity special among the stars. The first day of the rest of Marcus Chen's extraordinary life was about to begin. The research dome's decontamination chamber hummed to life as Marcus stepped through the outer airlock, his small companion still nestled securely in his thermal wrap. Red warning lights began flashing immediately as the station's biosensors detected an unregistered life form, triggering automatic quarantine protocols that would prevent them from entering the main facility until a full biological assessment could be completed. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice crackled through the intercom system, sharp with concern and professional alarm. Marcus, what's your status? The sensors are showing massive biological contamination readings from your position. Marcus looked down at the creature in his arms, which had grown noticeably stronger during their journey back to the station. Its scales seemed more vibrant now, shifting through a spectrum of colors that ranged from deep purple to bright gold. The creature appeared to be responding to the warmer environment by displaying what Marcus could only describe as relief and curiosity. Mom, I need you to listen to me carefully. I found something out there. Someone actually, and they needed help. The silence that followed stretched for nearly 30 seconds before Dr. Chen responded, her voice carrying that particular tone of maternal exasperation mixed with scientific intrigue that Marcus knew all too well. Marcus James Chun, please tell me you did not bring an unidentified xenobiological specimen into this facility without following proper containment procedures. I followed the most important procedure of all, Mom. I helped a living being that was dying. The decontamination cycle completed its initial phase, bathing Marcus and his companion in a gentle blue light designed to neutralize potential pathogens. The creature seemed fascinated by the light show, its large eyes tracking the patterns of illumination with obvious intelligence. It made a series of musical sounds that the chamber's audio pickups translated into a complex waveform pattern unlike anything in the station's xenobiological database. Dr. Chen's voice returned, now accompanied by the urgent footsteps of multiple researchers moving through the facility's corridors. Marcus, I need you to remain absolutely still while we run a full-spectrum analysis. Do not remove your environmental suit, and do not allow the specimen to make direct contact with the chamber walls. The specimen has a name, Marcus said firmly. I'm calling her Ember. How do you know it's female? Marcus paused, realizing he had no logical basis for that assumption. Yet somehow, looking into those remarkable eyes, He was absolutely certain of the creature's gender. "I just know, Mom. The same way you know when you meet someone new. There's something about her that's definitely female." Through the chamber's transparent walls, Marcus could see his mother approaching with Dr. Kethvar, a distinguished Alteron xenobiologist whose forearms were already manipulating multiple scanning devices simultaneously. Behind them came Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the team's leading expert in xenopsychology and Commander Thorne of the Galactic Science Council's Enforcement Division. The sight of Commander Thorne made Marcus's stomach clench. The commander's presence meant that this situation was already being treated as a potential breach of first contact protocols, which could result in everything from formal censure to criminal charges, depending on the outcome. Dr. Kethvar's melodious voice emanated from the external speakers as his scanners began their detailed analysis. "The biosignatures are extraordinary, Sarah. This creature is exhibiting neural activity patterns consistent with higher-order intelligence, but the electromagnetic readings are unlike anything in our databases. The thermal regulation systems alone suggest evolutionary adaptations that shouldn't be possible given this planet's current climate patterns." Ember seemed to understand that she was being examined, and rather than showing fear or aggression, she appeared to be actively cooperating with the scanning process. She positioned herself so that Dr. Kethvar's instruments could get clear readings, and when one scanner seemed to be having difficulty penetrating her scales, she actually adjusted her posture to provide a better angle. Dr. Tanaka leaned forward, her eyes wide with fascination. "Did anyone else see that? The specimen is demonstrating intentional cooperation with our examination procedures. That level of situational awareness and adaptive behavior indicates cognitive processing that rivals most spacefaring species." Commander Thorne's expression remained stern as he activated his official recording device. "Dr. Chun, I need a complete explanation of how this situation developed. First contact protocols exist for very specific reasons, and the potential ramifications of unauthorized interaction with a previously unknown intelligent species could affect diplomatic relationships across multiple sectors." Dr. Chun placed her hand against the chamber wall, looking directly at her son through the transparent barrier. "Marcus, I need you to tell us exactly what happened out there. Every detail, no matter how small." Marcus began recounting his discovery, but as he spoke, something remarkable happened. Ember began making soft sounds that seemed to correspond with different parts of his narrative. What he described finding her shivering in the cave, she made low, mournful tones. When he talked about wrapping her in his thermal blanket, her sounds became brighter and more melodic. Dr. Kethvar's instruments were recording everything, and his excitement was evident in the rapid clicking sounds that indicated extreme interest in his species. "Sarah, this creature is demonstrating real-time linguistic processing. She's not just responding to emotional cues in the boy's voice. She's actually following the narrative structure of his account and providing what appears to be confirmatory or supplementary information." The implications of this observation sent a wave of amazement through the assembled scientists. They were witnessing something unprecedented in the annals of xenobiology, spontaneous interspecies communication developing in real time between a human child and an alien being. Dr. Tanaka activated her psychological assessment protocols, her voice filled with professional wonder. "Marcus, would you be willing to try something? I want you to ask Ember a simple yes or no question and see if she can indicate her response." Marcus looked down at his small companion, who had been listening intently to the conversation around them. "Ember, do you understand what they're saying?" The creature's response was immediate and unmistakable. She made two distinct sounds, a high, clear tone followed by a lower, rumbling note. Then she repeated the sequence exactly. "Pattern recognition," breathed Dr. Kethvar. "She's establishing a basic binary communication system. One sound for affirmative, another for negative." Commander Thorne stepped closer to the chamber, his official demeanor beginning to crack in the face of what they were witnessing. "Dr. Chun, are you recording all of this?" "Every second," Dr. Chun replied, her voice filled with a mixture of pride in her son and all at the situation unfolding before them. Marcus asked her something else. Ember, are you warm enough now? The high, clear tone came immediately, followed by what could only be described as a contented sigh. Are you hungry? This time, the lower rumbling note, followed by the high tone. A qualified yes. Dr. Tanaka was frantically taking notes on her tablet. She's not just answering questions. She's providing nuanced responses. That double tone pattern suggests yes, but not urgently or somewhat, but it's not my primary concern. The decontamination cycle entered its final phase, and the chamber's atmosphere processors began adjusting the internal environment to match the station's main habitat areas. Ember watched the process with obvious intelligence, her head tracking the various mechanical sounds and her scales shifting color in response to the changing atmospheric pressure. It was Dr. Kethvar who noticed it first. Look at her thermoregulation patterns. She's actively adapting to the environmental changes in real time. Those scale color shifts aren't just emotional responses. They're biological adjustments to maintain optimal body temperature and atmospheric pressure. Commander Thorne activated his communication system to contact the Galactic Science Council's headquarters. This is Commander Thorne, Research Station Kepler, 442-7. I need to speak with the First Contact Committee immediately. We have a situation that requires immediate attention and possibly a full diplomatic team. Dr. Chun knelt beside the chamber wall, studying her son and his remarkable companion. Marcus, I need you to understand something very important. What you've done here today has created a situation that goes far beyond our family or even this research station. If Ember is truly an intelligent species native to this planet, then we're dealing with the first confirmed case of indigenous sentience discovered during humanity's expansion into this sector. The weight of her words settled over Marcus like a heavy blanket. He looked down at Ember, who seemed to sense his sudden anxiety. She made a series of gentle, reassuring sounds and nuzzled closer to his chest through the thermal wrapping. But, Mom, I didn't do anything special. She was dying out there. I just helped her. Dr. Tanaka smiled broadly, her eyes shining with admiration. Marcus, what you've done is demonstrate something that many species in the galaxy have forgotten how to do. You responded to a being in need with immediate compassion, without considering the potential consequences or complications. You've shown us that sometimes the most profound discoveries come not from scientific protocols, but from simple human kindness. The chamber's atmospheric equalization completed, and the inner airlock began its unsealing sequence. Dr. Chun gathered her mobile scanning equipment, while Dr. Kethvar prepared a portable containment field generator. Not to imprison Ember, but to ensure she had a controlled environment that could be adjusted for her specific biological needs. As the inner door opened, Ember raised her head and looked around at the assembled scientists with obvious curiosity. She made a series of complex musical sounds that seemed almost like a greeting, followed by the high, clear tone that they had identified as her affirmative response. Commander Thorne stepped forward, his expression now one of respectful fascination rather than official disapproval. If I may, Dr. Chun, I'd like to modify my report to the Council. What we're witnessing here isn't a protocol violation. It's a first contact situation that has proceeded more smoothly than any in recorded galactic history. Dr. Chun helped Marcus step out of the chamber while ensuring that Ember remained secure in her thermal wrapping. What do you mean, Commander? In every previous first contact scenario, there's been fear, confusion, and often conflict as different species attempt to establish communication. But here we have a young human and an alien being who have already developed a basic communication system and established mutual trust. They've accomplished in a few hours what usually takes teams of specialists months or years to achieve. Ember seemed to understand that she was the center of attention, and rather than being intimidated by the group of alien beings surrounding her, she appeared genuinely interested in each of them. She made different sounds when looking at each scientist, as if she was cataloging their unique characteristics, and attempting to establish individual recognition patterns. Dr. Kethvar approached slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. When he was within a few feet of Marcus and Ember, he activated a small translation device that began analyzing Ember's vocalizations and comparing them to known linguistic structures. Ember, dear, Kethvar said carefully. Can you understand me? The creature turned her attention to him fully, studying his face and four-armed physique with obvious interest. After a moment of consideration, she made the high, clear tone that indicated understanding, followed by a completely new sound, a complex trill that seemed to incorporate elements of both Dr. Kethvar's speech patterns and her own musical language. Remarkable, breathed Dr. Tanaka. She's attempting to mimic characteristics of his vocalization while maintaining her own linguistic structure. She's trying to bridge the communication gap from her end as well. As the group moved deeper into the research station, Marcus couldn't help but marvel at how quickly everything had changed. A few hours ago, he had been a lonely boy on an alien world, struggling to find his place among adults whose work he barely understood. Now, he found himself at the center of what was rapidly becoming the most significant xenobiological discovery in recent galactic history. But more than that, he had found a friend. Ember's presence in his arms felt natural and right in a way that defied scientific explanation. Whatever genetic or psychological factors had allowed them to communicate so easily, Marcus knew that their bond was something special, something that went beyond mere interspecies cooperation and approached the realm of genuine friendship. The next few hours would bring challenges that none of them could anticipate, as word of their discovery spread through the galactic scientific community and attracted attention from sources both benevolent and potentially hostile. But, for now, Marcus was content to hold his small companion and watch as the adults around them struggled to comprehend something he had understood instinctively from the moment he had looked into those remarkable eyes. Sometimes the most important discoveries weren't made through instruments and calculations, but through the simple human capacity for compassion and connection. 3 days after Marcus's discovery, Research Station Kepler 442-7 had been transformed from a quiet scientific outpost into the epicenter of galactic attention. Ships from 7 different species had arrived in orbit, carrying diplomats, xenobiologists, linguists, and officials from the Galactic Science Council. The small dome facility was operating at capacity as temporary structures were erected to accommodate the influx of visitors, all eager to witness the unprecedented interspecies communication that had developed between a human child and the being now universally known as Ember. Marcus sat in the newly constructed observation lab, watching as Dr. Velethan, a renowned crystalline language specialist, attempted to map Ember's vocal patterns using advanced harmonic analysis equipment. Despite the sophisticated technology and the decades of experience behind its operation, the results were frustratingly incomplete compared to the intuitive communication that Marcus and Ember had developed. Ember perched on a specially designed warming platform that maintained her optimal body temperature while allowing her freedom of movement. Her scales had taken on a brilliant amber hue that gave her name even more meaning, and her small wings had begun developing more complex membrane patterns that suggested rapid maturation in response to her improved environment. The tonal structures are beyond anything we've encountered, Dr. Velethan was explaining to the assembled researchers, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated deep concentration. This being appears to communicate through layered harmonic frequencies that convey not just semantic content, but emotional states, temporal references, and what can only be described as empathic impressions. Ambassador Gorthay K. of the Traders Coalition leaned forward, his massive bulk making the reinforced chair creak ominously. The linguistic capabilities are impressive, certainly, but what concerns the Coalition is the question of sapience verification. We need to establish beyond doubt that this creature meets the criteria for protected intelligent species status before we can proceed with any formal diplomatic protocols. Marcus felt a flash of anger at the casual way the ambassador referred to Ember as this creature. But before he could respond, Ember herself addressed the situation. She made a series of increasingly complex musical phrases, building in both volume and harmonic sophistication until the entire room fell silent. Then, looking directly at Ambassador Gorthe, she produced a nearly perfect mimicry of his deep, rumbling voice, saying the words intelligent and creature with unmistakable sarcasm. The silence that followed was broken by Dr. Chen's barely suppressed laughter. I believe that answers your question about sapience verification, Ambassador. Commander Thorne, who had remained at the station to oversee the situation, stepped forward with his official recording device active. For the record, the being designated as Ember has just demonstrated not only linguistic comprehension and vocal mimicry capabilities, but also situational awareness, emotional intelligence, and what appears to be a sense of humor. These characteristics place her well within the established parameters for protected sentient species status. Ambassador Gortheke's expression shifted to one of genuine respect, and he addressed Ember directly. I apologize for my inappropriate terminology. It was not intended as disrespect. Ember responded with the high, clear tone that everyone now recognized as her affirmative, followed by a warmer, more melodic sound that conveyed acceptance of his apology. The sophistication of the interaction sent excited murmurs through the assembled observers. Dr. Kethvar approached Marcus with a tablet displaying complex neural scan results. Marcus, we've been analyzing the electromagnetic patterns that occur when you and Ember communicate. The results are extraordinary. There appears to be a resonance effect between your brain waves and the bioelectric field that Ember generates naturally. Marcus studied the swirling patterns on the screen, noting how his own neural activity seemed to synchronize with Ember's energy emissions during their conversations. What does that mean exactly? It means, interjected Dr. Tanaka, that you two have established a form of empathic communication that goes beyond simple language. You're actually sharing emotional and conceptual impressions at a neurological level. It's similar to what we see in some telepathic species, but you're achieving it across completely different evolutionary backgrounds. The implications of this revelation rippled through the observation lab. If humans could naturally develop empathic connections with alien species, it suggested possibilities for interspecies cooperation that had never been seriously considered before. It was at that moment that the station's alert system activated, signaling the arrival of an unscheduled vessel. Commander Thorne immediately accessed the orbital tracking system and frowned at what he saw. We have a problem. That's a hegemony enforcement cruiser, and they're requesting immediate permission to dock. The hegemony hasn't been involved in first contact situations for over a decade. Dr. Chun moved protectively closer to Marcus and Ember. What do they want? Unknown, but their presence here suggests that someone with significant political influence has taken an interest in our situation. Commander Thorne activated his communication system. This is Research Station Kepler 442-7. State your purpose and authority for this approach. The response came in the form of a transmission from Admiral Vextar, one of the hegemony's most senior enforcement officers. His reptilian features appeared on the main display screen with an expression of cold professionalism that made everyone in the lab instinctively uncomfortable. Commander Thorne, I am here under authority of Emergency Protocol 77 Alpha. We have received intelligence suggesting that the creature you are harboring may pose a significant threat to sector stability. Marcus felt Ember tense in his arms, and her scale shifted to a darker, more defensive coloration. Through their empathic connection, he sensed not fear, but a deep sadness and what could only be described as ancient memory surfacing in her consciousness. Admiral, with respect, Ember has shown no aggressive tendencies whatsoever. She's been cooperative and peaceful since her discovery. Admiral Vextar's cold eyes fixed on the camera. The creature you call Ember appears to belong to a species that was thought to be extinct for over 3,000 years. If our intelligence is correct, she is what the ancient records refer to as a Draconin, members of a race that once possessed technological capabilities that threatened the stability of this entire sector. The words hit the assembly like a physical blow. The Draconin were legendary throughout galactic history, spoken of in hushed tones as beings of immense power who had simply vanished from the galaxy without explanation. Most historians considered them mythological, like the advanced precursor civilizations that supposedly existed before recorded history. Dr. Velethan's crystalline form pulsed with excited light patterns. Admiral, if you're correct, then we're not dealing with a simple first contact situation. We're potentially looking at the rediscovery of one of the galaxy's lost civilizations. Ember made a soft, mournful sound that seemed to carry the weight of millennia. Through their connection, Marcus suddenly found himself flooded with images and impressions that weren't his own. Vast cities of crystal and metal, skies filled with graceful beings that looked like scaled versions of Ember, and a terrible catastrophe that had forced her people to abandon their technology and flee to hidden worlds throughout the galaxy. She's not dangerous, Marcus said firmly, his voice carrying an authority that surprised everyone present. She's alone and scared and the last survivor of something terrible that happened to her people long ago. She came to this planet to hide, not to threaten anyone. Admiral Vextar's expression didn't change. Young human, you cannot possibly comprehend the implications of harboring a member of a species that once possessed the power to manipulate stellar phenomena. The Draconin's technological capabilities were so advanced that they could destabilize entire star systems with what they considered simple tools. But she's just a baby, Marcus protested, holding Ember closer. She doesn't know how to do any of those things, and even if she did, she wouldn't hurt anyone. I could feel her thoughts, Admiral. All she wants is to be safe and to find others like herself. Dr. Chin stepped forward, her maternal instincts fully activated. Admiral Vextar, my son has spent more time communicating with Ember than anyone else here. If he says she's not a threat, then I believe we should listen to him. Your belief is irrelevant, Dr. Chun. I have authorization to take the creature into hegemony custody for evaluation and potential containment. This is not a negotiable request. The tension in the room became palpable as the assembled scientists and diplomats realized they were witnessing what might become the first force separation of the galaxy's most successful first contact scenario. Ambassador Gorth K. stood slowly, his massive frame casting a shadow across the observation deck. Admiral, the Traitors Coalition disputes your authority in this matter. This being has already been granted provisional protection under the Galactic Sentience Accords. Any attempt to remove her without due process would constitute a violation of interspecies law. Furthermore, added Dr. Kethvar, the being has established a clear preference for remaining with Marcus Chun. Separating bonded individuals of different species against their will is considered a form of psychological torture under Coalition ethical guidelines. Admiral Vextar's image flickered with what might have been frustration. You're all thinking like scientists and diplomats. I'm thinking like someone who's responsible for the safety of billions of beings across this sector. If this creature is truly Draconin, then her mere presence on an inhabited world represents a potential threat that cannot be ignored. It was then that Ember made a decision that would echo through galactic politics for generations to come. She gently disentangled herself from Marcus's arms and moved to the center of the observation platform where everyone could see her clearly. Her scales shifted through a spectrum of colors that seemed to tell a story in themselves, and when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that no one had heard before. The translation system struggled to process her words, but the meaning came through clearly. She was offering to voluntarily submit to examination and evaluation, but only if Marcus could remain with her throughout the process and if her final disposition would be determined by a joint committee rather than unilateral hegemony decision. Dr. Tanaka gasped as her psychological analysis equipment registered readings unlike anything she had ever seen. She's not just making an offer. She's proposing a formal diplomatic solution. She understands the political implications of her existence, and she's trying to find a way to address everyone's concerns while protecting the relationships she's formed. Marcus felt a surge of pride and affection for his small friend. Even in the face of potential separation and imprisonment, Ember was thinking about others and trying to find a solution that would work for everyone involved. It was a level of emotional maturity and diplomatic sophistication that put many adult beings to shame. Admiral Vextar studied Ember carefully, his cold expression softening slightly. The creature shows remarkable intelligence and self-awareness. Very well. I will contact Hegemony Command and recommend that we accept her proposal. However, I must insist that the examination take place aboard my vessel, where we have facilities designed to contain potentially dangerous phenomena. Commander Thorne stepped forward. Admiral, if Ember is willing to submit to your evaluation, then I'll accompany the group as an official Science Council observer. We need to ensure that this process respects both her rights as a sentient being and the legitimate security concerns you've raised. As plans were made for the transfer to the Hegemony ship, Marcus felt Ember's small hand touch his arm. Through their empathic connection, he sensed her gratitude for his friendship and her determination to prove that her species could be trusted to coexist peacefully with the galaxy's current civilizations. Looking around at the assembled representatives of multiple species, all working together to find a solution that balanced safety with compassion, Marcus realized that this was what made humanity special among the stars. They didn't just discover new species, they made friends with them. And sometimes that simple act of friendship could change the course of galactic history. The Hegemony Enforcement Cruiser Stellar Dominion was a marvel of engineering that dwarfed the research station by orders of magnitude. As Marcus and Ember were transported aboard via shuttle, accompanied by Dr. Chun, Commander Thorne, and a small contingent of scientific observers, the sheer scale of the vessel became apparent. Corridors stretched for hundreds of meters in each direction, filled with beings from a dozen different species, all working in coordinated efficiency. Admiral Vextar met them personally at the docking bay, his reptilian features more impressive in person than they had appeared on the communication screen. Despite his intimidating presence, Marcus noticed that the Admiral's eyes showed genuine curiosity rather than hostility when he looked at Ember. "Welcome aboard the Dominion," Admiral Vextar said formally. "I want to assure all parties that this evaluation will be conducted with complete transparency and respect for the being's apparent sentience and established relationships." Ember had been unusually quiet during the shuttle transfer, but now she made a series of musical sounds that Marcus's growing familiarity with her language allowed him to interpret as cautious gratitude mixed with determination. Through their empathic connection, he sensed that being aboard this massive military vessel was triggering memories that weren't entirely her own, ancestral memories of time when her people had possessed similar technological capabilities. Dr. Chan walked closely beside her son, her protective instincts clearly activated despite the professional courtesy they had been shown. "Admiral, what exactly will this evaluation process entail?" "We have constructed a specialized examination facility that incorporates the most advanced detection and analysis equipment available to the Hegemony. Our goal is to determine the extent of latent capabilities that the being may possess, while ensuring that no harm comes to her or to any of the personnel involved in the process." They were escorted through corridors lined with transparent aluminum viewing ports that offered glimpses of the ship's vast interior spaces. Marcus was amazed to see entire ecological biomes contained within the vessel: forests, lakes, even what appeared to be a small mountain range, all designed to accommodate the environmental needs of the ship's diverse crew. The examination facility itself was unlike anything Marcus had ever imagined. The central chamber was a sphere approximately 50 meters in diameter, with walls that seemed to be composed of some kind of adaptive material that shifted color and transparency based on the requirements of whatever was being studied within. Suspended throughout the space were scanning devices of incredible sophistication, some clearly technological, while others appeared to be biological in nature. "This is remarkable," breathed Dr. Kethvar, his forearms gesturing toward different aspects of the facility. "Admiral, this equipment could analyze quantum-level phenomena while simultaneously monitoring biological and psychological states. You could literally map every atom in a being's body while recording their emotional responses in real time." Admiral Vextar nodded approvingly. The facility was originally designed to study artifacts left behind by precursor civilizations. If Ember truly is Draconin, then many of these instruments may actually be of her people's original design, adapted and improved over the millennia. At these words, Ember made a sound unlike any they had heard from her before, a complex harmonic progression that seemed to resonate with the chamber itself. To everyone's amazement, several of the scanning devices activated spontaneously, their displays lighting up with patterns of data that scrolled too quickly for anyone to follow. "Fascinating," murmured Dr. Velathan, her crystalline form pulsing with excited light patterns. "The technology is responding to her presence. It's as if it recognizes her on some fundamental level." Marcus felt Ember's excitement and wonder through their connection as she experienced recognition of familiar technological principles, even though the specific implementations were far more advanced than anything from her inherited memories. She moved toward the center of the chamber with growing confidence, her scales shifting to the bright amber coloration that indicated comfort and curiosity. "Admiral," Marcus said suddenly, "I think she wants to try something. Through our connection, I can sense that she recognizes some of the operating principles behind your equipment. She's not afraid of it. She's excited to see how it works." Admiral Vextar exchanged glances with his senior staff before nodding slowly. "Very well, but we'll monitor everything continuously, and any sign of dangerous energy buildup will result in immediate containment protocols." Ember positioned herself at the chamber's center and began making a series of increasingly complex vocalizations. As her voice filled the space, the scanning equipment around her began responding in ways that clearly exceeded its normal operational parameters. Rather than simply recording data, the devices seemed to be entering into a form of communication with her. Dr. Chun gripped Marcus's arm as they watched displays throughout the chamber come alive with patterns of information that defied easy interpretation. "What is she doing?" "I think," Marcus said slowly, his empathic connection allowing him to follow Ember's thought processes. "She's teaching the machines how to talk to her properly. Your equipment is advanced, but it's still using analytical approaches that are too crude to understand how her people really communicated." The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled observers. They were witnessing a being who was not only cooperating with their examination, but actively improving their technology in real time to facilitate better understanding. Admiral Vextar's professional composure finally cracked as he stared at the readouts flowing across multiple displays. "In 3,000 years of advancement, we haven't been able to achieve this level of integration between biological consciousness and technological systems. She's accomplishing it as if it were the most natural thing in the galaxy." Ember's vocalizations gradually shifted from the musical tones they had grown familiar with to something far more complex, a form of communication that seemed to incorporate not just sound, but electromagnetic frequencies, quantum fluctuations, and what could only be described as direct manipulation of space-time geometry on a microscopic scale. The chamber's central display suddenly coalesced into a three-dimensional representation of local space, but not as they had ever seen it before. Instead of showing empty void punctuated by stellar objects, the display revealed a complex network of energy patterns that connected every star, planet, and even asteroid in an intricate web of relationships. "She's showing us how her people see the galaxy," whispered Dr. Tanaka, her psychological analysis equipment struggling to process the implications of what they were witnessing. "To them, everything is connected. Every object, every being, every thought. It's all part of a single, unified system. Through his connection with Ember, Marcus began to understand the true tragedy of what had happened to her people. They hadn't been destroyed by war or natural disaster. They had evolved beyond the need for physical existence and had voluntarily transcended into pure energy, leaving behind only a few individuals like Ember who had chosen to remain in material form to serve as guardians and teachers for younger civilizations. "Admiral," Marcus said, his voice filled with new understanding, "she's not dangerous. Her people weren't threats to anyone. They were teachers. They achieved a level of technological and spiritual advancement that allowed them to become one with the fundamental forces of the galaxy, but they left behind individuals like Ember to help other species follow the same path when they were ready." Ember confirmed this interpretation with a complex series of harmonics that the now synchronized equipment translated into concepts that stretched the boundaries of everyone's comprehension. She was indeed one of the last material representatives of her species, charged with the responsibility of guiding other civilizations toward the same transcendent understanding that her people had achieved. But more than that, she had chosen Marcus specifically because she sensed in humanity a unique potential for the kind of empathic cooperation that would be necessary for the next stage of galactic evolution. Humans possessed an unusual combination of analytical intelligence and emotional intuition that made them ideal candidates for serving as bridges between different species and different levels of consciousness. Admiral Vextar deactivated his recording devices and approached the chamber slowly, his expression one of deep respect mixed with awe. "Ember, I owe you an apology. My people have spent centuries fearing the return of yours, but we never understood that you were never our enemies. You were our potential guides towards something greater than any of us imagined." Ember's response was a warm, welcoming song that seemed to embrace not just the Admiral, but every being present in the facility. Through the synchronized equipment, her message came through clearly. She had no desire to force advancement on any species that wasn't ready. But for those who were willing to learn, she would gladly share the knowledge and wisdom that her people had accumulated over millennia of existence. Over the following hours, as word of the discovery spread throughout the ship and then across the galaxy via quantum communication networks, Marcus watched his small friend demonstrate capabilities that redefined everyone's understanding of what was possible. She could manipulate matter at the molecular level, communicate across vast distances without any technological assistance, and, most remarkably, she could help other beings expand their own consciousness to perceive realities that had previously been invisible to them. But perhaps most importantly, she did all of this with the same gentle compassion and playful curiosity that had first endeared her to Marcus in that cold cave on Kepler 442b. Power, for her, was not something to be wielded over others, but something to be shared for the benefit of all consciousness in the galaxy. As the evaluation concluded and preparations began for Ember's return to the research station, Admiral Vextar made an announcement that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. The hegemony was formally establishing the Draconin Integration Protocol, a comprehensive program designed to facilitate peaceful cooperation between Ember's people and the galaxy's current civilizations. More importantly, the protocol recognized Marcus as Ember's officially designated human liaison, acknowledging the unique empathic bond they had developed and the crucial role that humans could play in facilitating interspecies understanding. Standing in the observation deck of the Stellar Dominion, as it prepared to return Ember to the research station, Marcus reflected on how much had changed since that morning when he had set out with a malfunctioning thermal scanner. He had discovered not just a new species, but a new understanding of what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of wonders. Ember perched on his shoulder, her scales now displaying a pattern of colors that seemed to incorporate every hue visible to every species present on the ship. She made a soft, contented sound that their empathic connection translated as gratitude, not just for his rescue of her, but for his willingness to serve as a bridge between her people and his. Dr. Chen approached them, her expression filled with pride and wonder. "Marcus, do you realize what you've accomplished? You've not only made first contact with a previously unknown species, you've helped establish a new model for how different civilizations can cooperate and learn from each other." Marcus looked out at the stars visible through the ship's massive viewing port, knowing that somewhere among them were others like Ember, waiting patiently for the galaxy's younger species to develop the wisdom and compassion necessary for true galactic unity. "I didn't do anything special, Mom," he said quietly. "I just helped a friend who needed me. The rest was all her." Ember chirped softly, and through their connection, Marcus felt her gentle disagreement. In her understanding, what he had done was extraordinary not because of its complexity, but because of its simplicity. In a galaxy often driven by fear and mistrust, he had responded to an unknown being with immediate compassion and trust. That simple act of human kindness had opened a door to possibilities that would reshape the future of galactic civilization. And in doing so, Marcus had demonstrated the unique gift that humanity brought to the cosmic community, the ability to see beyond differences and connect with others through the fundamental bonds of consciousness and compassion. As the Stellar Dominion began its journey back to Kepler 442b, carrying with it the seeds of a new age of interspecies cooperation, Marcus and Ember settled in to plan for the adventures that awaited them. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and they would explore it together, one act of kindness at a time.